and I am live on Esther Nagel at Balance and Breathe today, and I've got a real treat in store for you today. I am talking. And
are we back? Do you know what? There's something about technology that just, for whatever reason, has a mind of its own.
It does, doesn't it? I lost my internet connection. My internet connection is normally absolutely fine, and as soon as we started, we're like, no.
I think it's a conspiracy. We're not meant to talk. So it's obviously what we got to say is so good that the universe is like, keep it down, girls.
Maybe we're just supposed to write it in our journals instead.
Keep it secret and to ourselves and in our own little hearts instead of spreading love and joy to the world. Never mind.
Well, let's see.
Should we start again?
We start again. I've got no idea when I froze.
Introduce yourself, because right at the very beginning, all of a sudden you said your name and you said Balance and Breathe, and then you said my name, and that was it. And I sat here and I thought, I don't believe this. I don't believe it.
Oh, I've given you a marvelous introduction as well.
Oh, excellent. Give me another one.
Okay. I'm talking, and maybe the laws of the gods of the internet will let us actually do this. But I'm talking today to Dale Darley, who is a writer and a book coach, and she's a wonderful writer. I love reading her blog posts, and I've read a couple of her books, and I've done some of her Udemy courses. She really does know her stuff. And I wanted to talk to Dale because Dale writes a lot about the benefits of journaling as a self-study mechanism, as a way to dig into yourself and to just let your truth come out through the words that you write. Because very often we block what we really know. We don't see what we really know until we've written it down. And I know in my own journey I've had when I've written things before, and I've had to sit back and stare in absolute shock at what I've just discovered about myself 3 seconds after I've written it. It is amazing what we know inside ourselves that we keep to us, that we keep from ourselves. So Dale is the absolute expert on this, and you are in my world anyway. Listen, you are certainly someone I go to when I want to learn a little bit more about journaling. So I wanted to talk to Dale because self-study is a very important part of yoga and of personal growth as a general thing in life. And I think that there's going to be a lot of great insights that Dale can give us in respect of her professional work, and also, Dale, your own personal journey. Your journaling has really helped you in your own personal journey, for many years. So maybe we could start with you telling us a little bit about how you came to journaling and how it's helped you over the years.
Okay. I actually don't remember kind of when the point was that I picked up a journal and wrote, because I feel like I've been writing forever. And I was saying to someone recently that as a child, I would, a very odd child, I would create kind of like my own fantasy world in the field behind the house or the flats. We traveled, we moved a lot. My dad was in the RAF. And I can often see myself in my mind's eye playing stuff out. So I think I've always kind of like journaled in my mind. And I think that the point that I guess that I did it much more seriously was when I was in a long-term relationship, and I remember just sitting. I kept my journal by the side of the bed, and I did journal. But when it really had the biggest impact was when the relationship started to go wrong, and I'd moved into the front bedroom, and every day and every night I wrote and wrote and wrote, and I just, if something came on the radio, it would spark me off. If I just looked out of the window, something would spark me off, and it grew from there. And at one point, I did used to run journaling classes, which I adored doing because it was just such great fun getting people to really step outside of the world they thought they existed in so that they could just travel deeper into themselves. So I guess the answer to your question is I feel like I've been doing it forever in one way or another, but the seriousness of it and the ability to see so much more was really in this long-term relationship that sadly went very, very wrong. But that's life. So in kind of progressing from there, it kind of goes like that. So like right at the moment, I am journaling day and night. So I find when there's something that is really important going on, all I seem to do is want to write. And then when life kind of feels okay, I'll just do a little bit of reflecting either in the night or the morning, and maybe not every day, but right at this point, right now in my life, like every day I'm writing. So this morning I was so let's backtrack a bit. I know I'm going a little bit off track, but end of January, I heard some loud cracks in my back and the most horrible pain I think I've ever experienced. And, like 2 weeks later, I then discover I've fractured my spine and I've got osteoporosis. And, it's just like this, oh, thanks, mate. Cheers for that. So, I'm there. I'd literally got out the shower. I was absolutely happy as anything. I was singing, I was dancing around with my dogs. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh shit. And I looked up at the ceiling and I went, okay, so what is it you want from me this time? But what has happened is I made a decision that I would write a book about the journey. So I thought, well, if you're going to write a book, you need to remember what happened, like how you felt, like those moments where you felt like someone had ripped your life apart. Those things about surrendering, asking for help. Oh my God, that was the hardest. It's like writing my journal. Oh my God, I've had to ask for help. And I make jokes of it and say, I've got my entourage of slaves, but oh my goodness me, I couldn't have managed without my beautiful, beautiful friends. And so the journaling has helped me to get things straight in my head, to see where I'm still not listening, to see where I'm still needing to do some work. And it's great insight for writing a book. And before we went live, I said to you this morning, I got up and it was one of the things you'll notice about my handwriting changes depending on the energy and the emotion. So this morning I would call it quite energetic, because what I felt was we live in a fear-based society. Everything about like this and lots of other, and I'm not even going to give it a name, things are all based around fear. Something happens, you go to the doctor, and the doctor has a very tunneled vision of their part of life. So everywhere I've gone to deal with this, it's like, oh, we'll give you a prescription for this and we'll send you for that. And it's like nobody looks at you as a whole being. So this morning, my journaling was, I'm not putting up with this fear-based, I won't say all the things I wrote, but I'm not putting up with it anymore. So that way, that is amazing insight. That's insight into, me as a person. I've been fairly down since I went to the doctor, although I'm a very sunny disposition person. I've been quite down. And then this morning I got up and it's like, write, scribble. And then it's out of bed. And then, I went and had a bath and did a whole load of stuff. And it was, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not putting up with this. So sorry that I went off track.
No, that's fine. This is probably what your journaling's a bit like.
It is. It's kind of, often people say they can't journal. And I say, well, just put put a pen on a piece of paper and write a word, and then write 5 more little words. And then just kind of close your eyes and just perhaps meditate for a while. and then see what comes up. See, all the time I'm getting such brilliant insights. So I think it must have been in fact, I wrote a blog on this. It's kind of like, I was thinking, why have I got such big trust issues? And I'm not going to go into why. Well, that's life. But then I was thinking, well, do I trust my body to heal? And I stopped and I meditated for maybe only 10 minutes. And oh my goodness me, I had this picture of my granddad. And I reflected back on the story that I know about my granddad, my granddad's life, his mum was fairly promiscuous. She had children by many different men. He was put into care, so he learned not to trust women, and he gets married. And then my nan, I don't know the full story, so, I'm not entirely sure, but I think her dad got into financial trouble with business or something, and she gave them all the savings. So that perpetuates his belief that women aren't to be trusted. And all of this just spilled into my mind and into my journal. It was like, that's all I started was with the word trust. And then I ended up with this whole thing that said, maybe trust is generational. Maybe we need to look back through not just my life, my mum's life, my nan's life, my granddad's life. Maybe we just, need to explore in different ways. And that's what journaling does. So you literally start with a word, and then you just open up your muse, meditate, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden these things they just flood in, and then you can write till you're blue in your face. So there you go.
That's incredible. Is that like kind of quite typical of what happens when you start writing? And
it is for me. I would imagine if you're very rigid about your journaling, and you feel like there's a way to do it, and you're not following the rules and whatever, unless you let yourself go, then yeah, it's going to be hard. But for me, it's truly an awakening. I hear the lines of songs. So I'll be writing away, and all of a sudden something will come in, and I think, oh, hello, right, let's write that down. And I might then go look at the full lyrics, or I might play it on YouTube, and it'd be, oh yeah, it was good. So it's about just being truly open and letting whatever comes. But if you're worried about it, that you think there's a way to do it and there's a time, there's a proper time, it's not. It is however it works for you. Truly.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry with it, when I did my yoga teacher training, I was supposed to keep a diary,
Right.
and I have issues with that word. It was a journal, it was a reflective document.
Yes.
We were supposed to write every day how the practice went, how we were changing, how we were feeling, and all that sort of stuff. But I had issues because at least twice in my life, my diary has been read and then the contents of it used against me.
No.
by boyfriends, when the relationship was turning sour, and they've seen things and they go, "You wrote this."
So do you know what my answer to that is? If you pry, it's your own bloody fault.
Well, yes, yes, but the last time it happened, it certainly caused me an awful lot of grief. But and
yes.
I do. I mean, I live on. I don't live on my own. I live with Marcus, but that isn't an issue for me now. I don't have to worry about reading what I write, and the amount of stuff I put on my website. It doesn't really matter anyway. But I know that really stopped me. So I would imagine that. Do you find that that's an issue for people when you tell them to do journaling? Does that?
Yeah.
Worry?
Yeah. It is. People are always scared of being judged by other people. But I think what is really interesting about journaling is that, you can, here's an idea. Let's say you are having a tough time with somebody and you write the stuff in your journal. You could actually, by way of opening up a channel of conversation with somebody. So first of all, you can write how you feel. Then you can explore it from their perspective. and then you can explore it from how you would like it to be, and then you could actually have the proper conversation. And I would actually take my journal to somebody and say, I want you, I would like you, if you're willing, to listen to what I have written in these three things, and then let's open up that conversation and discuss, well, what do we do about it? Now, I think that might take a very brave person.
Mm.
And I remember like that I left, I call him Dickie Quick. I left Dickie Quick, a very unpleasant person. And I can remember once I'd written in one of my many journals what this ideal man would be like. And I remember like the little matchstick man and all this stuff and whatever. And he'd done something to me, and I said, I'm going to read this to you, whatever. And I read it out, and he said, you need to be careful what you wish for. So he was very unempathetic, and I kind of didn't care if he read it, because he just, it was like water off a duck's back. But I do think it's an opportunity for a conscious conversation with somebody, if you're brave enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a lot of vulnerability, and I suppose, but it's a lot of people, by the time the relationship gets to that point where you need that conversation, that you don't feel safe in being that vulnerable anymore, because you are really opening up yourself quite powerfully to somebody, and it can be very scary to do that.
I mean, I'm saying this in hindsight, Esther. I'm not saying it is something that I have practiced in the past. It is more, I've done the writing out what I think, writing it out what I think they think in terms of their perspective, and then looking at it as if like a third person were to come in and to look at those things. And then, I've done things like I've written like creative stories, but I think given who I am now and how much I've grown, and, how I feel about communication, I'm not in a relationship. I would have those conversations now. I would hate to go through the stuff that I've been through in the past. I'd like to think that I would be able to do that, and also that I would be able to, if my journal reflected back at me that I was not in a good relationship, just end it. I've got no time for this anymore. I haven't.
Yeah. And if if stuff comes out in your journal, then it's possibly the stuff that you've been suppressing and you've not wanted to face. Then you need to, when you actually see it written down, sometimes you've got no choice but to act on it.
Absolutely.
With my own, when I was doing the teacher training, seeing my thoughts about my drinking was a big.
Yes.
Right. Oh, yes, I do think that, don't I? And I've been hiding from that fact for years, but as soon as I saw it in writing, I couldn't hide from it any longer.
Yeah. It's scary, isn't it? Because you're having a conversation with your soul, and your soul's going, excuse me.
Yes.
I actually need to tell you something. You're being a prat.
Yeah.
Okay, soul. Cheers, mate. Now we can go and sort things out.
You get themes coming up quite often. When you do it regularly, the themes will come up and up over again until you actually notice of them as well.
It's so funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I find that there are things that pop up whenever I do it. I think I'm probably saying the same thing to myself quite a lot, and I think eventually I'm going to probably manage to find a way to say it to myself that will actually make it go, yeah, okay.
It's funny because I wrote a blog in the week about using a particular kind of language. So don't use like the words not. So like if I'm in pain, I mustn't say I'm not in pain. If I'm having fear, I shouldn't say fear less, because they're kind of like negative words. And so I journaled about that, and then I'd written a blog about it. And this morning I'm sitting there going, oh gosh, aren't I a silly lady? Because I put a meme together that said, I am not a number and I am not osteoporosis. And I thought, why did I do that? But I did that before I journaled about it. So it's like, because you know that oh, what's that place in Wales where they is it the prisoner they
Oh, oh,
put Myrion?
Myrion, yeah.
And I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember watching The Prisoner and he'd say, "I'm not a number." And that kept going through my head is like, because they do like, you know, they do a bone density test and they give you a number and everyone talks about their numbers and I'm thinking, I'm not a number. And then I thought that's really negative because that makes me a number. That makes me not unique. And I thought, I was sitting there this morning thinking, you've written all of that, and this is like in your journal, and it's like, and you've done this meme, not doing that again, young lady. So, yeah, yeah. Your language just screams at you because when you write things, you look at it and you're thinking, why? I'm looking at something I've written, and I'm thinking, oh, why did I write it like that? So, yes, it
Yeah.
always comes to bite you on the butt.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really powerful. Even the stuff that we say, and this, in fact, maybe even especially the stuff that we say about ourselves, quite tongue in cheek. I would fully talk about myself as being the queen of procrastination and self sabotage, and then
And then what happens? You do it.
self sabotaging.
Stop that straight away, young lady.
Yeah, I know. I got it on it's on my profile, on my bio for Thrive Global, and I was reading that this morning thinking, oh, I need to change that.
You do. It's like when people say to you, "How are you?" and you go, "Oh, I'm not bad." And it's like, no, you got to say, "I'm great, I'm rocking."
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It is so important. Those things that we tell ourselves, they create us. They absolutely create how you see yourself, and then how other people see you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
language that comes out through your journaling is so important. And I'm sure that when you did your yoga diaries, and now there's a good title for a book.
The Yoga Diaries. Yeah. It is, yes.
I'm sure no one. Well, I'm hopefully no one else has done it, or they're not going to steal your idea. Shh, don't tell a soul. I bet if you go back and read that the language you used, it'd be quite eye-opening.
Yeah, I suspect a lot of it was probably quite self-critical. I
Yeah.
think that an awful lot of it, because I was very much coming face to face with all the things I'd been hiding from. So I would imagine that most of it is, I've done this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I'm a mess. Yeah, maybe I'll read them one day. Maybe it would be an interesting experience because I haven't read them. I think with some of them I just wrote them in a flurry of stream of consciousness, and then just handed them over. I didn't edit them. My poor yoga teacher was having to plow through these reams and reams and reams of just me emptying my brain onto a Word document. It was probably quite conscious.
That is brilliant. Oh, you've got to go and have a look at them. I mean, I say you've got to. I actually have destroyed pretty much all of my journals. In each of my moves, I've just sat and burnt things and shredded stuff and thought, well, that's the end of that era, that chapter, that whatever. And that's kind of, burning it and releasing it and letting it go. But at one point I had boxes and boxes and when I came to Spain, I looked at all these boxes and I thought, I can't, what's the point of taking my baggage with me? I just sat there with a shredder and some of it I burnt and I just sat there and got rid of it. And sometimes I think I kind of wish I hadn't, but in a way it's quite cleansing just to burn.
Yeah, I can see that, especially the fire. That burning something you want to let go of. There's a lot of power in that, isn't there? A lot of real cleansing energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I do that on a full moon. I will, get my crystals out, light some candles. If it's the winter, I've obviously got a log burner going, and I literally, stream of unconsciousness on however many sheets of paper, and then it's lots of love to whatever. Burn in hell. Yes.
It's nice to do that sometimes, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's great.
It
It is
feels
good.
like it's like how you feel after a good yoga session. You feel like
Mm.
released and just
Yes.
full of
Yeah.
lots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do any more journaling workshops once you're back to health? Or do you do any work around journaling?
Do you know what? I don't. Um, and you kind of read my mind because this morning I was doing something. I wasn't journaling. I was doing something, and I thought, I wonder if there's a place for kind of supporting people through whatever it is via journaling. And the truth is, I don't actually know quite how to articulate it, quite how to put it together. What I am going to do is I'm just editing a book called Rude Awakenings, and then I'm going to start writing. I've called it Osteoporosis and Me because I can't think of any other title right at this point. Though I do have something in my head around like the bone thief or something, but I think that's probably a good idea for a novel that I may eventually write. And I was I've got another book that's called Soul Stories, which is about writing kind of those kind of books. And I thought actually I could put together a course that is kind of like pre-soul stories that is about kind of like writing for the soul, but it would be an online course rather than, it's not really very practical to do it here.
Mm.
So I don't know. I mean, I do believe it is such a powerful way to get really connected to like your divine inner wisdom, your inner resources. But I don't know. I don't know.
You've got,
We'll see.
you've got enough to deal with at the moment with your osteoporosis anyway, haven't you?
Well, I'm not going to call it mine. I'm just going to
No.
say that my body is out of balance, and the net result is my bones are porous. I'm constantly like rethinking my language when I write it. It's like, this does not belong to me. I am not a number.
Yeah, yeah, I was told the same. Again, back to my yoga teacher training, I wrote my asthma in one of
Mm,
my assignments, and my teacher told me not to claim it.
yes.
And funnily enough, I thought I like that, and I don't have such problems with asthma anymore.
Yeah.
But giving up
Yeah.
smoking, learning to breathe, and not actually
Yeah.
identifying myself with asthma so much, I think the
Yeah.
combination of all of those three things really helped to free me
Yeah.
from that.
And likewise with this, for me, it's, I've gone right back to nutrition basics. So back in 2016, I took a naturopathic nutrition course. I mean, I've studied nutrition practically all my life, but I went and did two separate weeks, but it was a year-long course contained into 2 weeks. And I love the naturopathic approach because it's about looking at you as a whole person and looking at right down to the cell, and if your cell is not hydrated and not getting nourished, it can't communicate with your other cells. And that's kind of what journaling is doing, because it's taking you right back to the smallest part of you and looking at, well, where are we stuck? So if you think of the cell membrane being stuck, and we're not being hydrated, we don't have a juicy life, and that the nutrients can't get in because the membrane is stiff. It's like, how do we loosen that up? How do we enable that cell to kind of come back to life, which is us? How do we, and then, how do we encourage it to then communicate to the next cell and the next cell? So the nutrition and the writing for me, just it's kind of such a powerful way to heal. But I had a great diet even when this happened, because back in 2016 I discovered I had an overactive thyroid. And I confounded my doctor, who said, oh, you've got to go to the endocrinologist and you've got to cut this out. And I'm like, no, I won't. No. I'll be back in 6 weeks. And 6 weeks later, I went back and everything was normal and has remained normal ever since. But
Wow.
actually, it's the osteoporosis, I believe, is a consequence of that. So, because we don't look at the whole picture, a doctor will look at a thyroid, but won't look at all the other blood results, which actually are indicative there's something else wrong.
Mm.
So you only treat that one thing. So what I did was I bought a countertop water filter because I also hurt my ribs. But what I didn't realize was it wasn't filtering out the calcium out of my water. So for a year, me and my dogs drank calcium that had 999 parts per million in it a whole year. So I flooded my body with calcium because I was focusing on something else. So in terms of what's happened, like now, I've gone right back to basics. And, my journaling is reflecting this, how can I be so dehydrated when I drink water, I have linseed tea, I soak my seeds and nuts. How did this happen? But it has, because I've got myself out of balance, because, they call this a silent dis-ease. And, you don't notice, you can't see inside your body, or maybe you can, but, one can't without a machine, I think. Although, you can travel inside your body and you can talk to your organs and things. I'd never kind of thought about, going in and traveling around my bones, but it's quite incredible how then something happens and you take everything back to basics. So my journaling is back to the raw foundations. And my nutrition is back to the raw foundations. And what is lovely about my journaling now is I'm not looking at, oh, the bones are porous. I'm looking at, well, let's look at, well, where do I not feel supported in life? Where am I not asking for help? What else is going? What about the environment? What about the cell? So I'm exploring like my inner universe and then my place in the universe, all from wanting to get back to kind of like these foundations. So yeah, it's quite fascinating if you just open that space and use the journaling to explore the bigger picture. You've got to look at the bigger picture. It can't be just what's going on. There's more. There's always more. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent again.
No, it's fascinating. It really is. I think, this is bringing a whole new dimension to my understanding of journaling, and the things that you're exploring with it. It's absolutely fascinating. I do that, like 15 minutes of just writing, very unstructured, without just writing the stuff that comes out of my head. And I don't think that I go I don't think I go deep enough into that. That's just the surface level stuff, isn't it? I think that there's so much more below all that meaningless chit chat that I'm coming out with a lot of the time.
So if you did that and then perhaps explored a little bit further, so perhaps do that and then do just look at what you've written and then close your eyes and allow whatever pictures or words to come, and then you'll go to a deeper level. And you get the same thing when you're writing a book. I'll often look at what I've written on the page. So that's usually in Word as opposed to in a journal. And I'll be looking at what I've written and I'll be thinking, well, what do I really think? So rather than I have that urgency to just write, I just read it and allow, and it's, oh yeah. And then something else will come. We rarely give ourselves enough space and time for that expansion. So don't stop what you're doing. It's great. But just maybe read it and then close your eyes or put some, music on and just wait, because something will come.
Yeah.
It always does.
Yeah. And very often I find out I sometime later something will pop into my head that I know has come from what I wrote in the morning. A lot of time by then I'm into doing something else, so I'm looking after Marcus, and it just kind of comes. Very often I get my insights when I'm out walking the dog as well.
I do. Yeah. Yeah, and then you can't say, excuse me, just sit there for a moment. One is just go to sit on a rock and journal.
No, that wouldn't work at all. She wouldn't sit around for me to do that, that's for
No.
sure.
But you can get your phone out and talk into your phone.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I should make a point of doing that because I know that I have some brilliant ideas when I'm out, and then by the
They
time
go,
I'm back, they've gone. And you always think, don't you, oh, this is just too good. I'm not gonna forget this. This was so good. I'm definitely not gonna forget it. And then it's gone. Yeah, yeah.
I record quite a lot. Um, I mean, one of the beautiful things about living here is there's nobody around. I mean, years ago, I used to get my dictaphone and I'd be recording into it. I go down like the wetlands in Newport, and I can remember someone walking towards me, and I got my dictaphone, and I thought, oh, I don't care what you think. I'm just going to keep talking. And now there's absolutely nobody. Maybe the odd fox that tried to escape from my dog's curiosity. But yeah, it's when you're out in the wilds, it's just such a lovely space to be able to, as those things come up. Yeah, to
Yeah,
just record.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I should do that when I get those ideas because
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how much I firmly believe I'm going to remember them. Really, you're
doesn't
not.
happen. I know, I know. It's mad, isn't it? It's like I will remember, and then it's like I can't remember a damn thing. So yeah, the phone is great.
Yeah, it's like when you have those ideas when you're just about to drop off to sleep.
I
And
know.
I'm thinking, oh God, that's brilliant. I've got to write it down, but oh, I can't be bothered to turn the lights on. I'll remember it. It'll be fine. And I know I've
So
had fantastic ideas at bedtime.
so you could say to your unconscious mind, allow me to remember this in the morning, or let me dream about it, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that might work. That really might work. Instead of trusting my conscious mind, yes.
Trust me.
Oh, we've got Loretta listening in from Italy here
Oh,
now.
wow.
So we've got Jackie in Spain and Loretta in Italy. How cool! Hi, Loretta. Loretta? Do you have any questions you'd like to ask Dale about journaling and about anything that's come up so far in the conversation? Drop us another comment if you do. Excuse me. Oh, so you're working on how many books did you say you're working on?
Oh,
Two.
don't do as I do. So I started a book when I hurt my ribs, that has a completely different name. And because I couldn't get really off the sofa, so I had 6 months where I couldn't really do very much. So I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. I wrote hundreds of thousands of words. And when I got to the end of it, I thought, I don't want to turn any of these into a book. But then what happened? So as I left it, and then I thought, actually, if I take just that bit, which is just the story, that can be, because I've been on this massive journey to self-love, which is why I'm able to deal with the current thing easier, because I've found a place of peace and contentment. So I looked at all this stuff that I'd written and I thought, right, let's take some of that. And I have written more, but I keep trying to keep the book only to about 35,000 words. So I've got Rude Awakenings, which I'm currently editing. So before we got on this call, I was sitting there recording it as a way to edit, and I'm going to put that into a little blog. So I've been, reading it out loud. So I got that book. When this happened, straight away, I knew that this would be a book. I knew it would be a book because, I'm not going to tell people what to do. All I'm going to say is this is what I did. This is what went on in my head. That fear, that disappointment, that being, pushed through the sausage factory. So so that one I've started to outline, but I've said to myself, when Rude Awakenings goes to the proofreader, I'll then do the outline. So what I've also got is I have a book called Soul Stories, which is how to write these kind of books that are personal stories rather than a how-to. So they're personal stories with really, really strong inspirational messages that you are then going to use to build your business around. So you will hopefully, you know, create some coaching programs, run retreats, workshops, online courses, use it for your speaking. So it becomes a different kind of book rather than, I mean, you know, I have, you know, plan your non-fiction book in a weekend, and it's a how-to book. It's not a story. So Soul Stories is about how to get really connected to your soul and write the story or stories that your soul wants to hear. Then I've got, so a couple of years ago, that's three.
Now.
I got another one. A couple of years ago, I was walking in the Rambler one Sunday night, and this beautiful little puppy comes bounding towards me, and my dogs play with her. And I very mistakenly think that if I ring a local charity, that they will take it in. So I lead her up, and I try to walk her back to the village, and she's not having none of it. So I partly carry her, partly walk her. I ring a local charity, and all the charities here are completely overloaded with abandoned dogs. So I brought her home. Ferdy attacked her. It was a really, really difficult time, and I mounted this big campaign to rehome her. But every time I looked at her beautiful eyes, I went, "You're more than welcome to stay." And stay she has. So I called her Angel because I felt that she was a message. So I've written a book called Puppy with No Name. And what it actually is as I was out walking, I kept going, you know what you said, you get ideas. Well, I kept going into these ideas of, well, where did she come from? You know, what happened to her? You know, how did she find herself, you know, running around, and who did she meet? Well, you know, we have wild boar and ibex, which are mountain goats, and foxes around here. And I started to think, well, foxes, you know, people don't like, you know, a lot of people don't like foxes, but I see them as intelligent. And I started to think, actually, they could be like really good planning people. And boars could have this kind of, you know, they're very connected to the stars. So I started creating this mad story in my head. And what it morphed into was my story told as her. So leaving, you know, Richard and all that kind of stuff, Dickie Quick, never say his name, Dickie Quick. I took her from being abandoned into a kennel to meeting this man called Dickie Quick and all his many women, and her being rescued from all this kind of crazy stuff in my head, right? So I've written it in first draft, except for the last chapter. And I don't know why I haven't written the last. Again, it's just a really short book. So I've now got a plan. Rude Awakenings, Osteoporosis and Me, Soul Stories, Puppy with No Name, and then I've started to outline a novel. So I got 5 books, which will keep me going for a few years, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Because I want to morph into writing more like novels, and more like the Puppy with No Name has a lot of serious messages in, you know, about diversity, about friendship, about communication, about, you know, looking at your skills, being connected to the stars and to Mother Earth. So all of those things, you know, things like the 5 elements, there's little bits of that kind of come in. So all the things that I love and believe in, or all in her story. So yeah, mad.
I cannot wait for you to write that.
Well, I've done the first draft. So Rude Awakenings I'm editing. That'll go to the proofreader soon. I was going to launch it on International Women's Day, and then I fractured my spine fractured. Yes. I was like, oh, there we are, then I won't do that.
Yeah. That's crazy. Going back to that. I mean, you were just in the shower when your spine.
I got out of the shower and I came into my spare bedroom, and I was singing and dancing, and like, you know, I play with the dogs. You know, it's like they're like little human, well, they're dogs, but they've all got beautiful personalities. And I reached over to get some clothes, and I just pulled the bag, and it went crack, 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 and I'm like, that hurts. It's literally like, So yeah, so what happens in osteoporosis is that your bone becomes porous. So if you look at it, you do balance and breathe. So balance, is so important. So your body is unbalanced because the minerals are not getting to the right places. So your body, your bone is an amazing warehouse, a storage place of lots of great nutrients. So if you've created this imbalance through nutrition, through stress, I mean, when I look back at my life, it's like, yeah, it's been a little bit stressful, so this, it leaches out. Well, you can't see it. If you cut yourself, you can see it, but you can't see that happening in your body. And so often the first point that someone knows they've got osteoporosis is they have a fracture.
Yeah.
But actually, when you look at it holistically, I hurt my ribs. I was still dealing with when I hurt my ribs, my spine did this. My stomach came under my breast, and I spent 2 years straightening my spine, strengthening everything, getting my stomach back into its rightful place down there, not up here. So I'd done a lot of work on my body, but in actual fact, I hadn't looked at the bigger picture. So I believe that the fractures came because of the trauma, and then because of the trauma, I went gluten-free and nightshade-free, and I drank more water, but I didn't go right back to, like I said earlier, I didn't go right back to the very, very basics. So I believe that while I was focusing on one thing, I drank all that horrible water, created an imbalance.
Yeah.
And we do that. We have, when we get stressed, I get stressed now. Ferdy's just broken his leg, right? And he came, the first night he came back from the vet, he wanted to get inside my bed. He's got this bloody great big cone on, right? I barricaded him downstairs. He cried. So the first night he cried. I had to ignore him. The second night he was determined. He was coming. He bashed the thing down. And he hobbled, and I've got tiled everything. Very dangerous, right? So he gets upstairs, but I'm fast asleep. I can't hear anything. And then all of a sudden, there's all this crash, bang, wallop. Everything's gone off the table, everything. And then I feel there's something on my bed, and then I can hear him crashing off. And it's like, oh, God. I wake up, and I'm stressed. My body goes like that. And I just think, how am I meant to cope with a dog that's got a broken leg that wants to get in my bed with a cone on his head? And I can feel it straight away. Like, often, because we're so stressed, we don't notice that fine tuning.
No.
Well, I know now, I can feel it rising. I can feel the scream rising just like that. And it's like, breathe, 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 and it has stressed me, and my body, I've noticed my body hurts where the fractures are hurt even more. And like today, it's like, I'm not buying into this anymore. Let's bring that balance back. Bring the balance back. So it's, I mean, I know we didn't intend to talk about osteoporosis, but I do have a message for men and women. Go and get some blood tests. Look at your blood tests holistically, and do something about the results that come back. So if your results show that you've got a thyroid issue, deal with it. Change your diet. Get hydrated. Make sure you eliminate properly. And elimination means get rid of rubbish people. Write about them in your journal. You will see where your boundaries are being overstepped. Start to declutter the house. So, hydration is not just about hydrating the cell, it's having a juicy life. Journaling, look where it's not juicy. Elimination. I've decluttered my house. I've had it feng shuied and shamanic something or othered. And then it's about your good nutrition. And, if you write about it, what you're eating, and you write about what you're feeling, those emotions, where you're feeling things in your body, then that'll come up. So go and get the blood tests. look at them holistically. You know, when let's if we just talk about thyroid, throat chakra, where are you not being heard? Who told you you didn't have the right to speak? Yeah, you know, that'll come in your journaling. So you do those blood tests, and if you've got an issue with your thyroid, go and demand a bone density test. It's only a number, and at the moment it's one of the only ways of measuring you've got something like osteoporosis or osteopenia, but it's somewhere to start, and then
Yeah.
just start looking after yourself. Sorry, I ranted.
That's very, very, very good advice. I'm going to make an appointment to see my doctor on Monday because I have been told I've got a thyroid problem and I ignored it.
You could sort it out with nutrition, honestly.
Yeah.
And there's a great book by someone's name. Sorry?
I didn't like the medication they gave me, so I'm just pretending it's not happening.
Don't. I mean, you don't need to take it. There's a great book. It's got nothing to do with thyroid. It's a great book by a chap whose name I can't pronounce, and it's called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. And what he basically says is, when we become dehydrated, our body systems don't work properly. That's it's a whole book about all kinds of diseases. And it's right. You know, when you start to hydrate properly, pain is less. You know, when you eat properly, like, you know, when I had my first lot of blood tests in 2016, there was a marker there for arthritis. The doctor didn't pick it up. The doctor this time has, but I don't, you know, the only time I suffer a little bit is in my thumbs, is if I eat gluten, my hands completely seize up, right? If I have anything with gluten in it. And I took nightshades out of my diet. Well, nightshades, you know, they're not good for joint pains and stuff like that. So you need to put water in. I swear by a gluten-free diet. I don't want any of that. Do you know, the minute I eat gluten, and I've not been tested to be a celiac, so I don't know if I'm allergic or just intolerant. The minute I eat it, and as a writer, these need to be like this. You know, I need that flexibility. So it's, I mean, I'm never going to tell anybody what to eat and what to do. All I can say is I think it's a really good idea to go and get yourself tested. I mean, a blood test is a snapshot in time. A bone density test is a snapshot in time. But you can keep having snapshots.
Yeah.
Read. You know, I've read some amazing books by osteoporosis specialists that have got me right journaling, like I'm reading them, you know, and they're very scientific stuff, and I'm thinking, oh, I must go and research that. You know, I've looked at loads of YouTube videos, and I think, oh, how amazing is that? And it's the reading, the watching stuff, the being in some of the forums, and the writing that really opens up your mind to exploring your body in a deeper way.
Yeah.
Anyway, off my soapbox.
Well, you've certainly given me lots to think about there with my thyroid issues. I've had dire warnings from the doctors. You know, oh, you don't take care of this. This will happen. That will happen. This, like you said, the fear-based stuff. But always for me, the fear of what I think happened inside my head when I took
Thyroxine, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I pretty sure I ended up overdosing on it because I was far more. I was displaying the symptoms of an overactive thyroid while being treated for an underactive thyroid. I was fairly manic and crazy at the time. So, you know, I don't know if that was to do with that or if that was to do with the drinking, if that was, but I took it out and I calmed down. So,
strange that.
Yes. So I've kind of refused to go back on the thyroxine, but I do sometimes notice I feel really tired and I feel really sluggish up in my head sometimes. And I think this is actually a symptom of what they said I've got. So maybe I do need to do something about it. So maybe I will follow your lead and journal around it and read up on it. I've just looked up that book you mentioned, so I'm going to take a look at that book about water. Many Cries for Water, and that sounds like a good read.
It basically is about just, you know, it's about getting hydrated, and there's a lot of case studies in there about, you know, the role that water plays. And it is, you know, we're made up of cells that makes tissues, that makes organs, that makes the systems of our body. You know, we become part of our environmental ecosystem. You've got to start by looking at that very basic. So, but you can sort that out with nutrition. You
Yeah.
can. I think, see, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence about gluten, but I swear to God that I think it's evil.
Mm.
And you
I
can
remember.
make, go on.
I was just saying, my brother-in-law, my brother-in-law is celiac, and I remember him one day saying, "Gluten is the devil,"
It
and
is.
that phrase has really stuck in my mind. I mean, I still love bread, so I struggle with it, but you know, I can do without it as well. So,
But you can make other, it's like now, right? I'm
yeah.
I'm not a vegan, but I'm dairy free, grain free, meat free. I do eat some fish, right? Gluten free, lactose. I am definitely lactose intolerant. You cannot give me milk, I will be ill. But I'm going to make a cake after this. So what's in it? Almonds, raw chocolate, chia instead of eggs. Can't remember what else. And I've got pureed dates, but I could equally put maple syrup or sweet freedom or whatever in. And it takes no time to stick it in the blender, 20 minutes in the oven, and I've got cake, right? You don't have to eat the crap that's in the supermarkets. You know, it's not good for you. And yeah, it takes time. You know, I freshly prepare everything. You know, in the morning I may have smoothie or buckwheat porridge with lots of other stuff in it. You know, I'll make a big thing of soup with different kinds of spices and whatever else in it. You know, I make green juices. My diet, you know, I'm always consciously thinking, what am I going to eat? You know, how does this serve my whole being? And I cook from scratch every single day. It's like a little factory in my house. Got to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I always feel so much better when I eat food when I actually know what the ingredients look like before I start eating it. Yeah, it makes such a difference. I find Marcus as well. Marcus always rolls his eyes and complain when I tell him we got vegetable soup or stew or something, but he will eat a bowl of vegetable stew like it's nectar from the heavens. You know, I give him a
But it
plate of
is, it's great.
enthusiastic.
But it is absolutely, I mean, I do miss dunking, you know, crusty, horrible white bread smothered in butter, you know, into something. But actually, you know, you could grate vegan cheese over the top. You can put nutritional yeast over the top. You know, you can have it with some quinoa. You know, there's so much you can do in terms of different ways of eating.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
anyway, we've
Well,
digressed and we've done an hour.
yeah, I just looking at that, we've been on for an hour now. Yeah, and I think the people who've been watching have been enjoying it by the look of it. And there's certainly a lot of really useful information in here. We've talked about journaling and we've talked about keeping yourself well, which is exactly what we promised people. So we
Well,
may have digressed, but we've also stayed on track within that fairly wide scope I give us.
oh, what the hell. It's been absolutely delightful.
It really has. Yes, it has. It's been really good fun. I always love talking to you.
And I do
If
you.
people want to, well, I've given them your website, but do you want to tell people where your website is, just so that you know for definite where you are?
Okay, so it's daledarley.com, DaleDarley. I also have the Soul Writers Academy. So there's some like different courses and different that's more of where I put my newest courses is onto the Soul Writers Academy. You can find me on Facebook. You know, as long as you're not one of those strange, what they call them, US generals who who seems to pop up every day, I will accept your friend request.
They always tell you're very beautiful, don't they?
Oh, much more than that. I mean, they've been looking. They've been looking for me all their lives. I don't think they'd like to live with me because it's like I will get you under control, whoever you are. But don't you find that though? Every single day you wake up and there's like 5 or 6 friend requests, and you look and they're all generals or. And I remember saying to someone recently, I said, it'd be better if they could actually put, perhaps show that they're a more human side. Maybe they should put a dog, have a picture of them and their dog. And blow me, the very next one that gave me a friend request had a picture of a dog. And I thought, that's weird. Someone's listening.
Facebook knows everything.
They're listening into our deepest, darkest secrets.
My brother and I, we tend to talk a lot through, we have Facebook Messenger calls. And very often we get onto the subject of what Facebook knows. And I find myself going, are you listening, Facebook? Do you know that we want to do this now?
The beauty of living in a connected, controlled world.
Oh, yes. I think that could be a whole other hour discussion, really.
Oh, don't. I've got lots of conspiracy theories. I got conspiracy theories about drugs, about food, about all sorts of things. So we'll stop there.
I think that might be a good time to stop. Yes. Well, thank you, Dale. This has been fabulous. I've loved talking to you, and I will be sharing this in a blog post on my website, balanceandbreathe.co.uk, in a couple of days. So stay tuned and keep pay attention. So have a lovely Saturday, everybody. And I'm off to make myself some lunch that doesn't contain any gluten.
Well done you. And I've actually got some soup from last night, so all I'm going to do is heat it up, and then I'm going to make a cake.
And then enjoy your cake. Oh, great. Oh. Have a lovely Saturday, and you take care of yourself, and I'll speak soon.
Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Bye.